portion of the project, or our next presentation. And it's all about the Chapter 102 permitting updates, which I'm sure everybody's happy to hear that there's been a lot of updates and there's a lot of new things to learn. So just when you got it all figured out, we go and change everything on you. But a lot of this is for the better, and what it's really doing is setting you up for e-permitting. A lot of the things that you're going to see now are going to be very familiar to you when everything switches over to e-permitting. So it's good that it kind of rolled out a little bit early and gives you a chance to learn it. And here's Alan.
Okay, let's put it back in, right?
Yep.
Okay, like Drew said, there's going to be 4 of us presenting. We're going to switch on and off as we go through. We have a lot to get through, so if you could save your questions till the end, we're going to try to answer them at the end. If we don't get to your questions, there's a question box, the pink box over here next to the survey box. Write them on the brightly colored cards, and we'll do a Q&A document at the the next couple weeks and send it out to all the participants that are here today. So, we'll try to answer your questions at the end, but we just might not have time. Got 2 clickers here. So first, give you some learning objectives for the first part of the presentation. We're going to introduce the draft PAG01 permit, if you haven't heard of it yet, and discuss some of the major changes of the PAG02. So the proposed PAG01, it was sent out for public comment. It's in draft now. It hasn't been finalized. Not quite sure when that's going to occur. It's getting closer, but it's not final yet, so you can't start using it, but you can go online and look at the forms and the actual permit. It applies, some people are calling it the small projects NPDES permit. It applies to projects with earth disturbance between 1 and 5 acres, more than 1, less than 5 acres. Its goal was to simplify the preparation and reviews of PCSM, or one of the goals was. There's a limited area of impervious surface, and the goal is to put some disconnection practices in place. So these are more of your smaller, maybe a single family home with a long driveway, your smaller, maybe commercial properties. That was the goal of this PAG01. Again, these are draft eligibility requirements, so it's not eligible in special protection watersheds. There is some talk about an individual small projects permit, so that might be coming later on, but right now the PAG01 is not for use in special protection right now in draft form. You can't discharge to combined storm sewers, and the projects must be on the same or contiguous tax parcels except for those off-site support areas. Another one is no runoff from the off-site impervious areas may flow onto the project site. So you'll see a little asterisk there that when you see the final version of the PAG01, these might change, but right now these are the potential, or some of the potential eligibility requirements. So it's coming. I don't quite know when yet, but it's just something we wanted to introduce in case you haven't heard of the small projects PAG01. And you'll see some of the forms and some of the documents will have like PAG01 on them because they're trying to prepare for it to be released. Told you it was a quick review. So we're going to get into the PAG02 now and some of the major changes. Let me just move this over here. So some of the major changes of the PAG02 are the expiration of coverage has changed a little bit. There's now a permanent assurance of personnel training, which we're going to get into. There's certain prohibitions on certain discharges dealing with impaired and TMDLs. I'm going to discuss the new design modules, and then I'm going to switch it over to Bob Jevin from DEP. He's going to get into the contaminated or regular fill section. So when you're talking about, up on the slide, we wanted to compare what the 2017 version of the PAG02 with the 2019 version. In the past, when you got your permit for a general NPDES permit, it was a 5-year term. And you had to renew at the end of that 5-year period. Now, it was issued, the general permit was issued on December 7th, 2019. So it's a 5-year term. no matter when in that 5-year period you get your permit, the permit expires on December 7th, 2024. So if you get your permit in 2021, it expires on December 7th, 2024. If you get your permit in 2022, it expires on December 7th, 2024. So it's no longer a 5-year period from the date of the issuance of the general permit. Another new condition is the required training. Permittees are now responsible for ensuring that all personnel conducting work on the project site relating to the earth disturbance are aware, understand, and have qualifications to carry out those earth disturbance. So there's going to be a requirement to show that you've certified that the people on your site, the personnel on your project site, have the ability to carry out those disturbances and not cause pollution events and install the best management practices correctly. So this is a PAG 2 required training now requirement. Another change is the prohibition of certain discharges. So in the 2019 version, which is the current, there's non-discharge alternatives, or ABACs, must be implemented to waters impaired for the reasons listed there: siltation, suspended solids, turbidity, water flow variability, flow modification, alterations, or nutrients. So if you have any of those impairments, you have to look at non-discharge alternatives or ABACs. And we're going to get into them a little bit more as we go through the presentations. If you have a TMDL water, the non-discharge alternatives or ABACs must be implemented to waters that are impaired for siltation, suspended solids, and nutrients, and your WLAs must be met if they're applicable. One thing to definitely note is if the surface water is impaired for those things, siltation, suspended solids, turbidity, water flow variability, and the list I had before, and you're in, let me just go one more slide here, and you're in the Chesapeake Bay, you must use those non-discharge or ABAC BMPs. It doesn't, you don't have to go through the steps that you would if it was an individual permit. You don't have to first analyze for non-discharge and then go to the ABACs. You can choose, but you have to use non-discharge or ABAC BMPs if you're in the Chesapeake Bay watershed. Permittees, it's not on the slide, but I just want to make a note that permittees with existing coverage prior to the 2019 revision to the permit, you're not going to be required to upgrade your BMPs. So if you already have permit coverage, you won't have to upgrade those and have ABAC BMPs for those permits. But if you have a new project or an existing project with a major modification with new earth disturbance, you will have to upgrade those to ABAC or non-discharge alternatives. So if you're in the Chesapeake Bay and you have any kind of revisions to your plan, it's definitely something you want to look into and have, like Drew was saying, call districts, call DEP, have some meetings, send some emails back and forth to figure it out. There is a document. We did provide a resource page when Monroe sent out the agenda for today and all the presentations. There was a resource page with that. And there's links to PAG 2 frequently asked questions document. If you look at number 2, this addresses that. So I would definitely read those documents. DEP has provided a lot of fact sheets, instructions, FAQ documents. And honestly, we've been learning this process just along with you guys in some instances. You really have to look at those instructions and FAQs and walk through the applications. And this is one instance where I think they're very useful to do that. You may have noticed if you've put in an application or tried to put an application together since December that there's no more checklists. There's now modules, module 1 through 4. The detailed checklists have been eliminated, and you can now use these modules to act as your narrative component. You have your plans, and then these modules can be your narrative for both the ENS and the PCSM plan. And now I'm going to hand it over to Bob, and when you see me at the end of Drew's presentation, that means you got about 5 more slides until you get to go home. So Bob's going to be up now. He's going to grab some candy.
I don't know exactly what I'm using it for yet, but we'll see.
You gotta put this up.
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen. Once again, our previous Kahoot champion. Congratulations, Ellen. So I brought up this candy, so I'm going to try to pass some of it out here. Has anyone actually submitted a new permit yet with the new forms? I saw the first hand all the way back there. Yep. Take it. First hand to go up. There you go.
So much.
I will. All right, one more. How did it go? Yeah, training coming on that.
I'm getting errors.
So if you are having any problems with the spreadsheet, Drew's going to be covering that soon. So that's a good time to ask any questions or let him know if you're encountering any issues, or let us know. That's definitely a work in progress. We have seen quick updates on it when issues are brought to our attention. A lot of you know me already. If not, I'm Bob Jevin. I'm the NPDES permits chief in the Northeast region of DEP. So I'm going to present here for a little bit. So first, I'm going to talk about. Which one is this? This one's the right one, right? Yeah. Okay. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about some updates to the permit for contaminated and regulated fill. As you see right on top here, we're not hiding anything. This may be revised in the very near future. So particularly related to the regulated fill. So I'll kind of come back to that at the end of the slide here. As far as contaminated fill, what we're talking about is soils existing on the site that usually it's based on past land use of the site. If you have soils that qualify as contaminated, and contaminated definition for our permit, in terms of our permit, is to have concentrations of pollutants that exceed residential or non-residential MSCs, which is the medium specific concentrations. You can see references there. And that our environmental cleanup program deals with more. So if some of you are familiar with like the Act 2 process, we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then the thing with the contaminated soils is if you are disturbing them, that would require an individual permit. If you have hot spots on your site where there's some contaminated material on the site, but it's isolated and you're going to be working around it, you're not touching it, and that could still be done under the PAG-02, the general NPDES permit. But just something to keep in mind if you are disturbing those soils, if you're excavating them, grading them, or especially if any infiltration is proposed in those areas, those are just things that, not that you can't do them, it just requires a little bit more review. So it would go to an individual permit, which we would look at in the region. We also have a professional geologist look at those from our environmental cleanup program. And another note, if you have sites that are accepting regulated fill, you should really contact the regional office for additional information. Right now, your best bet would be to contact me. If you know your site is going to be taking regulated fill, we have some of these large fill sites that go on for 5, 10 or more years. And right now, the language in the PAG-02 states that regulated fill is not allowed under the general permit. That is something that is being reevaluated right now, and I can tell you that we know that language is going to change. The language itself is not finalized yet, so if you're encountering that, please give me a call and I could walk you through kind of the draft of where that's going and see how it applies to your project. So just a brief overview of what Ellen covered and what I just talked about here. We discussed some major changes to PAG-02, and with that in mind, we would just suggest that you carefully review the changes, look at the permit itself, and note the expiration date that Ellen talked about, that they all are going to expire on December 7th, 2024. Basically, that was a EPA requirement that DEP's kind of managed to dodge here for a while, and we're forced now, because with the general permit versus an individual permit, a general permit is a statewide permit that's issued, and we're just acknowledging your use of it, whereas an individual permit, we're issuing you your own permit that's good for 5 years. So really a general permit, since it's already issued, it already has an expiration date, we're acknowledging your use of it. So it's a little bit more like the Chapter 105 general permits in that sense. And there will be renewal instructions that will come as that date gets closer to how to apply for continued coverage under the new PAG02 at that time, the 2025 PAG. So I would encourage you to read the NOI and application instructions, the FAQ documents, and all the other provided DEP guidance. There was a handout available that had, I think, 3 pages of links that Ellen put together that's very helpful. All these documents are kind of in some different places within the DEPE library and our ENS resources page, but you could find direct links on that handout to these instructions and different FAQ documents. So next we're just going to dive deeper into the PAG02 and the individual permits. So in the next portion here, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some new procedures and concepts within NPDES permitting. And then I'm going to kick it over to Pam, our program manager here. She is going to talk about the new NOI and application forms. And finally, Drew Wagner, he's going to talk about the PCSM spreadsheet we touched on and these modules that Ellen alluded to that are essentially replacing the narrative component of the submittal. So first up, I'll just talk about some general changes and new concepts in permitting. So the new NOI and application can be used for all application types except permit transfers. Transfer is now separated from a co-permittee. There's 2 different forms for co-permittees, and transfer is now available on the website. But the NOI, or the individual permit application, would be used for new permits, straight renewals, or major and minor amendments. So when submitting the application package to the district, one thing that's new you'll see in the instructions is that a copy of the NOI, notice of intent, or the individual permit application should be sent concurrently to the regional office. Right now, those all come to me. You could put it to my attention if you'd like, but they're all coming to me. And basically, that's just because of all these changes, it's keeping us aware of what's coming in, and it makes it a little bit easier for me to answer questions when they come up. And if you guys have questions, or the districts, at least I have something in front of me and I don't have to play the usual game of, hey, can you scan that? Can you send it to me? I need something to look at. So I do have a little stack on my desk so far. Well, I'm sure it'll get bigger here as you all start to submit these applications. So one thing too with the individual permits, the GIF, the General Information Form, should also be sent up. And that's really what enables us to tell when other programs need to be involved in your project. Because sometimes you may be aware, and we hope that you are, but if you typically deal with only our permits, and something could sometimes kind of sneak up on you that you are doing something that is regulated by another program or another DEP regulation, that GIF will help lead you in the right direction if you're doing anything that would require other permits. And to aid in efficient major modification processing, or now we're referring to them as amendments, just a minor nomenclature change in the new forms. What we previously called modifications is amendments in the new forms. But if you're doing a major or a minor amendment on the new forms, we just ask that you put in bold text any information that's changed. Just helps it stand out, cuts down the review a little bit. And again, the NOI and application instructions that are available on the website are a really great guide in the new process. So if you have any questions, I really recommend starting there. It's a little hard to look through all the application and the modules and spreadsheets and everything first without reading through those instructions. They kind of serve as a good introduction. So here's some additional items which are new. We're asking that when you submit a plan revision, if it updates a plan sheet and you choose not to replace all the plan sheets, which is nice, safe paper, right? Please update the revision date, at least on the cover sheet of the plan, so we have something clear on the first page of the plan that notes the latest revision date. That just helps out in the field to know that everybody's looking at the right document. And it also aids the district in reviewing paperwork such as modifications. And also renewals still require the submission of an NOI or an application. And you'll notice that term NOI and application is kind of used interchangeably a lot here. Basically, the reason that they're popping up as two different words. Previously, we had the NOI and it was used for general and individual permits. Right now, it's broken down into two separate forms, and we'll talk about that later, but an NOI is a notice of intent to use the general permit that already exists, whereas on an individual permit, it's your application for a permit. So the term NOI and application, they're almost the same document, slightly different, but one is for general permits and one is for individuals. So for a renewal, you would still need to fill out the general information, application information, applicant information, your eligibility information, and compliance history and certification sections. For straight renewals that don't have any plan changes, you would just include a letter that states that you're not changing anything, you're just looking for a new 5-year term, that just really moves everything along a lot faster. If plan changes are proposed when you're due for a renewal, you can check both boxes on the application forms. You can do an amendment and also a renewal at the same time to get that new 5-year term. And then Ellen had mentioned earlier about the training requirements on the permit. I'll read it quick for you here from the actual permit condition. It states that the permittee and co-permittee are responsible for ensuring that all activities on the project site comply with the requirements of this permit. The permittee and co-permittees are not required to provide or document formal training for subcontractors or other outside service providers, but they must ensure that personnel understand any requirements of this permit that are relevant to the work they are contracted to perform. And a training log must be kept on site and made available upon request from the EPA, DEP, or Conservation District staff. And again, that training log is really more of a communication log. It's not really documenting like training like this that you're gonna do for subcontractors. It's more documenting that you communicated to them what their responsibilities are under the permit, and if there's any conditions of the permit they need to be aware of, special conditions, you want to make sure everybody on site is aware of those. The municipal and county notification forms have been updated. So the letters that were always sent out before, those have been updated to a form that it's a little simpler to fill out, but it also creates a little bit of confusion right now for some of the municipalities that maybe don't see as much development. So one strong recommendation we would have is to send a copy of the instructions along with the form, because the instructions tell not only you how to fill it out, they tell the municipalities how to fill out their section. So those forms are sent to the municipality and the county, and then to satisfy application completeness for the Conservation District's review, you either have to have both the applicant's signature and the signatures from the municipality and the county, or you could have the signatures from the applicant along with the receipt saying that it was received by the county and the municipality. And again, conservation districts have reported confusion from the municipalities as far as what they need to do on their part. So pass along the instructions and kind of just be available to them when you send it to them. If they have any questions, let them know what you're really looking for them to do. Our standard operating procedures have been updated in a few different ways. Completeness reviews are no longer started until all fees are correct. So when the conservation districts receive an application, that first thing they're really checking is to make sure that the correct fees were all submitted. And once that's been confirmed, the completeness review will start. And this includes the disturbed acre fee, administrative filing fee, and any district service fees. One other new thing is minor deficiencies. Before, we would sometimes handle some insignificant or more minor comments informally through email or phone call, but there wasn't really a process for it in our SOPs. So now it's been clarified in the SOPs to kind of let everyone know that we have that opportunity to take, it calls out 2 working days. So those are the kind of things we're looking at as minor. If it's something that you can address within a couple of working days, we'll call you up or we'll email you and try to get those resolved if we can without having to send a full-blown technical deficiency letter. That could be done in both completeness and technical review processes. And a single completeness letter per application submittal will be provided. And when an application is complete, the letter may now come either in the mail or via email from the conservation district. So it's just something to be aware of, that they have that option. We've had some problems in the past as far as contact information goes on the application forms and general information form. So we're really relying on that to be correct and current, both for the consultant as well as the applicant. We've had a lot of times, I mean, I see a lot of permits that come back to me because the applicant's address changed in the last 6 months or year and it was never updated on our forms. We send out a lot of correspondence now via email. One thing our region has done to try to save paper and postage and everything is our deficiency letters now. We've been sending them out to the applicant, but we send out an electronic copy not only to the applicant, but to everyone on the CC list. So that's something important to keep in mind for the designers in the room here, to make sure you're putting the contact information for the person that you would actually want to get that email, because that's going to be the fastest way. I know the engineers in the room are always wanting to see those comments as soon as possible. So that's happening automatically as they go out the door now. But if you have somebody's email address listed that's not really the person that you want to get that right away, it's just something to think about as far as what email address you're listing on the application. And then the fun slide here. These ineligibility, denial, and withdrawal, these are, I just wanted to talk about fees associated with permits when any of these 3 situations occurs. If a general permit NOI is found to be ineligible, as in you've submitted for a general permit when it clearly doesn't qualify, that permit, you would need to then apply for an individual permit if you wanted to pursue the project. But fees submitted as part of the general permit review are not refundable. Further, if an individual or general permit is denied, the fees are not refunded and cannot be reused upon resubmittal. However, if a permit application is withdrawn, which is technically an action by the applicant, so we may talk to you about a situation on the project, maybe you need more time to evaluate something, maybe something new presented itself that you need to better evaluate. you can withdraw an application and come back to it when you're ready to resubmit. And a lot of those fees can be reapplied to the new submission for the exact same project. That includes our DEP fees, so that would be for the disturbed acre fees. So if you already paid for that disturbed acre fee and then you're coming back in for the same project another time, we could apply that fee again to the new submission. Now you would have to check with your local conservation district to see how their fees would be handled, but just something to keep in mind. And this slide just shows kind of a breakdown of review and response timeframes for the completeness review and technical review processes. So this slide shows both the old PAG02 and the new one, as well as the old individual permit and the new individual permit timeframes. So before, everything was kind of 60 days across the board. If we sent an incomplete letter, we would give 60 days to respond. If we sent a technical review letter, we'd give 60 calendar days to respond. Both of those, you were able to apply for a time extension for an additional 60 days. So one thing DEP is seeing a lot of, we've gone out statewide, mostly our central office and executive staff, going out to these listening sessions, talking with developers, talking with different people across the state. And a lot of what the concerns that have come up are overall timeframes to get a permit. So in response to that, some changes were made to try to move the process along, because when we have these super long time extensions, we end up with permits that take 6 months or a year to even get fully reviewed if we're waiting for those materials. So the new time frames, a incomplete letter still gives 60 calendar days, but if you request a time extension, it'll be given for up to 30 days. And for a technical review, the initial response time frame given is 30 calendar days rather than 60, and the time extensions are up to 15 days. Now, as far as time extensions go, they need to be reviewed by the regional office, so this can be sent through the conservation district, but they will go to Pam and I, and we, with the districts, have to evaluate those. Those time extension requests really, in the past, were kind of just accepted for what they were, and you requested them and we granted them, but the goal now is for us to really review what the time extension request is for. So is it because additional testing needs to be done, or the work that needs to be done to satisfy the deficiencies is going to take more time? As far as extensions for to comply with municipal requirements, PennDOT, things like that, it's really not taken into consideration with our review. So just something to be aware of. And as I mentioned with the fees, this is where the voluntary withdrawal thing could come in to help you if you kind of have something unexpected that comes up where you really need to take more time to get a resubmission back together. It might be in your best interest to look at withdrawing the application and coming back when you're ready to resubmit, rather than having it proceed to the point where we have to make a permit decision based on what we have. Because if you know that's deficient and we have to make a decision, then the decision would likely be a denial. So, everybody wants to avoid that. As far as pre-application meetings, there's been some updates there. They're still encouraged but not mandatory. However, there's a new pre-application meeting request form that you can submit to the conservation district or to the regional office. And that form has a lot of information that helps us get a head start on everything and kind of know what we're going into with your meeting. If you've done some permits in, Lehigh County, probably Monroe too, right? And Northampton, they have their own pre-application meeting forms that might be more detailed than what DEP has. So just something to be aware of too, but you have to, at minimum, do our DEP pre-application meeting request form. And this can be found on the website or also on the handouts that I talked about with the helpful links there should be a link to it there for you. And it's important to complete the form in as much detail as possible, provide a detailed site description, provide a location map, and provide a plan showing the site, at least an overall plan, even if it's still in the sketch or conceptual stages. It just gives us a good idea coming in of what we need to be ready to discuss. Contact your local conservation district to determine where to send the request. And if possible, please include a few dates that would work for your team. Depending on the district you're in, some conservation districts do have set meeting schedules where they're available on Wednesdays. I know I see some Northampton, they have some people in the back there. They do theirs on like the first and third Wednesday of the month. Lehigh does them every Wednesday. Everybody's a little different, but just contact your conservation district to see what their availability is. And then the PAG tool is noted here. That's the Permit Application Consultation Tool. That's on the DEP website. And basically what that is an electronic version of the GIF, General Information Form. It asks similar questions to that to determine what types of permits might be needed. And in the case of a large, complex project where you might have multiple permits going on with multiple DEP programs, these meetings are very helpful, kind of high-level meetings to see what is needed from each program. It's a great resource. When you fill that out, it gets sent directly to our Assistant Regional Director, Joe Paczynski, and he will contact you very quickly to set up that meeting with all the applicable DEP programs. So, let's see. All right, that's all I have for you right now, and I will turn you over to Pam.
Hello. I'm going to